It's another Getting Real with Ashleydawn, and in this one I want to talk to you about two words that I'm sure you hear a million different places, and that is love yourself. Love yourself. In the Bible, it talks about the greatest commandment in the whole Bible is to love the Lord your God and to love your neighbor as yourself. It's a given that you love yourself. Well, I would say the one thing that I think a lot of people struggle with is loving themselves. A lot of people, if we're being honest, hate themselves. And they self-sabotage, and they don't think they deserve good things. And so when a good thing comes, they push it away. And they don't truly love themselves. They may be selfish, but being selfish and loving yourself are two totally different things. For instance, I love myself, but I'm not selfish. I can be, but I try really hard not to be. You need to love yourself. And not in the way that you're better than everybody else, not in the way that you think your needs, come before everyone else. I mean, they kind of do. Like on the plane, you got to put your oxygen mask on before you put anyone else's oxygen mask on, right? If you're suffocating, can't really help anybody with theirs. But you need to love yourself. I think about Mother's Day's coming up, and one of the biggest things that my mom has really taught me is that you have to love yourself before you can love anyone else. You have to treat yourself well before you can treat anyone else well. If a mom has a bad body image and she body shames herself every day, her children are going to grow up questioning their own body because of the example that's been set for them. My entire life, my mom has kind of done her own thing. She hasn't worn makeup. She hasn't worn dresses. She hasn't been real fancy like all the other moms at, the school that I went to. But she was herself. And she never apologized for being herself. My dad made her like her own kind of clothes, and she kind of did her own thing. And my parents, were tattoo artists. And so they were covered in, art and tattoos, and they wore different clothes. And both of my parents really loved who God made them to be, in that they didn't try to be anybody else. And because of the freedom that I saw them walking in, I learned to love myself. And I learned that I can wear whatever I want and I'm still beautiful. I can do my hair or my makeup or not, however I want, and I'm still beautiful. So much, self-love. Yeah, bubble baths and candles and going on shopping sprees and going to spas are nice, but you got to get to the heart of it. Do you love yourself? Do you have a good self-image? Do you have a good body image, mind image? Are your thoughts towards yourself healthy ones? Are they positive ones, or are they negative ones? Because if the voice in your head is constantly negative and you're constantly putting yourself down, you're already defeated. How are you going to help anybody else? How are you going to encourage anyone else when you're spending all your time talking down to yourself, discouraging yourself? It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and then love your neighbor as yourself. Well, it just takes, the liberty that you love yourself. How are you supposed to love your neighbor if you don't love yourself? How are you supposed to give love away if you don't have any? If you come over to my house and you ask me for sugar, I can't give you no sugar if I don't have any. I can't give you no water if I don't have any. I can't give you insert thing here if I don't have it myself. So how are you going to give somebody love if you don't have it yourself? There's an NF song. If you want love, you're going to have to give some away. Well, if you don't have it, you can't give it away. So I just really want you that's listening, if you have a negative self-image of yourself, if you are talking down to yourself, if you look in the mirror and you don't say, you are lovely, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, right? If you don't see God's love when you look at yourself, can I ask you, start reading the Bible. Get alone with God. Ask Him to show you how He feels about you. Ask Him to show you how beautiful you are. And I know I have a lot of guys that watch my channel, and ask God to show you how handsome you are, how great He made you. God does not make mistakes. I know the world likes to put labels on us and likes to make us think that we need to look a certain way or act a certain way or have this, and this to be appealing or attractive. No. God formed us in our mother's womb without flaw, without blemish. He didn't make a mistake when he made us. And a lot of people that are going around hurting others are really hurting others because they themselves are hurting and they don't know how to deal with it. It's easier for them to push that hurt off on others. And if they don't love themselves, if they don't have a healthy self-image, they're going to start biting other people down. And they're going to start, I've had several friends that were insecure about their own body parts. And so they see somebody with body parts that they're maybe jealous of, and they start putting them down. Oh, they must have had work done. They must have had this. They must have had that. Maybe they did have work done, but maybe they didn't. The bottom line is, it doesn't matter. God made them fearfully and wonderfully. Now, they might have changed stuff and altered stuff, and that's between them and God. But it doesn't change who God made them to be. The outside is literally just a shell. It's like a little hermit crab, right? When he outgrows a shell, he gets a new one. Well, one day, all of us are going to outgrow this little earth shell, and we're going to get a new one. We're going to get a heavenly shell. Some of us are going to get a hell shell. And I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it does. And I'm not trying to be mean, but it's appointed before man one time to die. And when you die, you got to face God. And he's going to let you know. Well, I mean, you already know if you've rejected him your whole life. But heaven or hell, I believe in it. You don't have to. But one day, you're going to find out if it's real. And I surely hope you're on the side of real. Anyway, my point is that these shells are not made to last forever. We spend so much time focusing on how do we look and how good we look and our clothes. And listen, I love clothes and I love fashion, probably more than I should. But it's just clothes and it's just a body. Do you love you? There's a Colby Calais song that I went through a really rough patch in my life to where somebody in my life, well, I don't even know why I say somebody. My ex-husband dogged me on a daily basis. When we were dating, I was the greatest thing in the world, and I just was the most beautiful woman he ever saw. And then we got married, and then he just flipped a switch, and I was the ugliest woman he ever saw, and I was skinny. I was too skinny, and I needed to gain weight, and this, and this. And he would just put me down every single day and just berate me and just put me down. And I started listening to it. How stupid is that? I used to be a beauty queen. I do pageants, and I started listening to this fool and believing what he was saying. And I'd look in the mirror, and I'd be like, well, maybe I am too skinny. Maybe I am this. Maybe I am that. Granted, I was a speaker, and I'd go speak at conferences, and then I'd come home, and I'd, encourage other girls and be like, you're amazing, and you're wonderful. And then I come home, and my ex-husband would be like, you're ugly. You're terrible. I don't know why you go speak. I don't know why you encourage people. And I'm like, whoa, buddy. So anyway, this isn't about him. He has no point in my life ever again. But he did a lot of not so nice things to me. And I listened to some of the not so nice things he said over me. And Colby Calais' song, Try, literally broke so many lies that he spoke over me. And, in her song, she says, you don't have to try. Take your makeup off, look in the mirror. Do you think you're beautiful? She doesn't say, does somebody else think you're beautiful? She says, do you think you're beautiful? Because I like you just the way you are. Anyway, it's a really good song, Try by Colby Calais. I really highly encourage you to listen to it. But my point is this. There's a million people that'll say a million things to us. And some will be really mean. And some will be really hurtful. And some will make us cry. Believe me, I've been there. I've cried more times than I would like to admit, because of things that people have spoken over me or said about me. And it's easy to be like, oh, I don't care what people think. But when somebody is constantly speaking things over you, it does impact you, especially if it's a place that you've given somebody to speak into your life. And if you don't love yourself, it's going to be really hard to point out the love in others. My ex-husband did not love himself. I found that out very quickly when he started trying to hurt me. I'm like, oh, you must be real hurting yourself. Like, you must really be hurting that you're trying to hurt somebody that's being so kind to you and so nice to you. Like, no. And I've had friends that have been really hurtful and have said mean things to me, and I'm just like, wow, you must really have a lot of hurt in your heart that you are just wanting to hurt people. That is no kind of nice. You have to love yourself if you're going to give love to anybody else. If you don't have a positive self-image, you're probably not going to encourage other people. If you don't have a positive mindset where you're speaking positive words over yourself, you're probably not going to be speaking very many positive words over anybody else either. And that's the sad thing, because the world needs more positive. The world needs more love and more light and more kindness. The world doesn't need more criticism and more, what's the word? Not strict, it's with an S. It's like when somebody's like nitpicky. The world doesn't need more of that. The world needs more kindness. Do you love yourself? If you don't, well, you need to work on you before you try working on anybody else. You have to love yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. You won't be loving your neighbor if you don't love yourself. One of the most loving things I think you can do if you've ever been hurt or you went through any kind of trauma is go to counseling. Get to the root of your problem. Get to the root of your pain and deal with it. Deal with it. My ex-husband went through a lot when he was a child, and I found out, after the fact. But if he would have went to counseling, like legit counseling, and listened to the counselors and allowed them to influence his life in a positive way, it could have changed his whole life. But he didn't. And so he was never taught how to love himself. So therefore, he didn't have good friendships. He didn't have good relationships because he didn't know how to love himself. And if you don't love yourself, it's real, real hard to love your neighbor or to love your wife or to love your friend. Because you're stuck with you all the time. You can get away from your neighbor. You can get away from your friend. You can get away from your husband or your wife, but you can't get away from you. Everywhere you go, there you are. So if you don't love yourself, like honestly, if you're really struggling to love yourself and maybe you don't look at yourself in the mirror, can I just encourage you, maybe seek a godly counselor to walk through some of that pain with you, to help you navigate through the trauma that maybe you've experienced, to help you navigate through the painful memories that maybe you stuff down inside instead of dealing with. I'm telling you, counseling changes lives. Counseling makes the world a better place because people learn to deal with their junk instead of stuffing it inside, instead of pretending that it's not there. It's there. Guess what? That pain is there. And everywhere you go, it's gonna be there. It's not going anywhere unless you deal with it. A big old tree. Unless you take that whole root out, no matter how many times you cut them branches, that tree is going to keep growing. You got to get the roots out. Everything grows from the roots. Your life, your ability to love yourself or not love yourself, all comes from the roots of your childhood. What kind of things did you go through in your childhood? What kind of things were done to you in your childhood? Have you worked through them? Or have you just tried to ignore them or pretend they didn't happen? Do you have healthy relationships as an adult? If you do, praise God, that's awesome. But if you don't, it's probably because of something that happened to you as a child or as an adolescent or as a teenager. Do you have good relationships with your family or your parents? If you don't, 9 times out of 10, you can point it back to your childhood. Do you have good relationships? Can you go through conflict well? Can you fight fair? If not, there's probably some trauma from your childhood. And I'm not saying that to like point fingers and say, oh, you've got jacked up childhood. We all have areas that things happen that shouldn't have. People did things to us that they shouldn't have. But we all need to get help. I truly believe in counselors. I truly believe in pastors and mentors and people that know what they're talking about. People that have walked through some things that can help you walk through things too. If I want to go to Orlando and I don't have a map, I'm going to ask somebody who's been to Orlando. If I want to go to Tennessee and I've never been to Tennessee, I'm going to ask somebody who has. A lot of times counselors are counselors because they've experienced something and they want to help other people walk through it too. Because of the things that I've experienced, I make these videos to try to encourage and to try to help and inspire people that they're not alone. I don't want anyone to feel alone. I don't want anyone to think that they're all by themselves, because they're not. You're not. If you're watching this and you're like, Ashleydawn, I really feel like I'm all by myself. I've been dealing with this and nobody knows about it and it hurts me and I just pretend that it doesn't. You're not alone. You're not alone. It's not your fault things were done to you as a child. And maybe there are things that were done to you as a child, or maybe there were things that you did to somebody else that are your fault. Deal with them. Get some awesome counseling and deal with them. Counselors have really helped me a lot. And there's a bunch of videos that I've talked about it because it's important. And especially with 2020 and this past year and the isolation, and one trauma will trigger memories of another trauma and unhealed parts of a trauma. COVID, and I'm just being real, okay? This video wasn't going to go here, but apparently it is. Apparently somebody needs to hear this. I truly believe that God leads and guides every single one of my videos, and I know he does. I can't explain the things that happen on my videos because I don't plan for them. Anyway, this video is about loving yourself, but COVID happened. You know, we went into quarantine, and granted, I know Florida's quarantine wasn't as bad as everybody else's, and I'm grateful for that. I'm thankful for our governor, and I'm thankful for that. But I will say that going into quarantine triggered memories of 6, 7, 8 years ago being married and being all by myself in an apartment in a city that I didn't know, with no friends and nobody, all by myself. And so quarantine triggered that. When I was married, I was taken away from, you know, all my family and all my friends and my job and my ministry and pretty much everything. And I was all alone. I didn't have a hug for months and months and months. And I just remember missing my mom and dad's hugs, missing my friends' hugs, missing kind words being spoken over me, missing love, missing sunshine. My soul needed sunshine. And when coronavirus and all that stuff happened and COVID happened and we went into quarantine, it triggered all of those things that I had went through that weren't dealt with. I thought I had dealt with them because I'm like, it's 8 years ago. I'm over that. I'm totally moved on. I've been divorced. Like, I've gone through counseling. Like, I'm good. And it brought them all up. And I was reminded of the pain that I felt in those moments. And I was reminded of how much I missed my dad. Well, when 2020, my dad had been gone for 3 years. And it reminded me that he wasn't here. And it reminded me of the feeling of being away from him. So I get that one trauma can trigger another trauma. Hi, I've been through it, kind of going through it right now, you know. And I just want to tell you, you're not alone. You're not alone in that. There's nothing wrong with you because you have feelings and emotions. There's nothing wrong with you because some things are too hard to walk through yourself. There's nothing wrong with you because you need to go to a counselor. There's nothing wrong with you because you don't understand what you're going through and what you're feeling. Some things are above our understanding, and God blesses us with people in our lives that will help us understand and will help us navigate through those things. I just want to encourage you. Your life matters. Loving yourself is so much more than a bubble bath and a selfie. It's so much more than a spa day with the girls. Loving yourself means healing from the things that hurt you so that they don't hurt others. Loving yourself means dealing with maybe some toxic traits in yourself that you need to sort through and to uproot and to take that, you know, those roots out so that those things don't grow in your life anymore. Loving yourself means being the healthiest version of you so that you can love others out of that healthy overflow, so that you can love others out of the abundance of your heart, not out of a scarcity mindset, out of an abundant mindset. So I just want to encourage you, if you are hurting, if you're walking through something, please get healthy. Whatever that looks like. Maybe it's working out. Maybe it's your physical health that needs some help. Maybe it's working out. Maybe it's talking to a nutritionist or a dietitian. Maybe it's your spiritual health. Maybe it's talking to a pastor. It's reading the Bible. It's joining a Bible study or joining an e-group or joining something like that. Maybe it's your emotional health. Maybe there's some things in your life that you need a counselor to help walk you through. Whatever area is in your life that you're struggling and you're hurting, I just want to encourage you to love yourself enough to get healthy. You are seen, you are celebrated, and you are loved right where you are, exactly as you are. But God has more for you. He does. He has more for you. And sometimes we accept the breadcrumbs because we think that's all that's there. But I promise you, He has an entire feast ready for you and ready for the people that are going to be in your lives. Love your neighbor as yourself. You got to love yourself first. I love you, but more importantly, God loves you. I hope this encouraged you. You're not alone in this. If you need to talk to somebody, I'm always here. You're not alone. You are not alone. It's okay to hurt, and it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to have feelings that you don't understand. Hi, been there, kind of there right now. You're not alone. If you get nothing else from this video, you're not alone, and God wants you to be healthy. I love you, and I'll catch you in the next one.